So we're going to take a look at an example for a J Business 2 property. And I have one drawn up here. It's a J2 zone piece of land. It's 150 feet wide by 200 feet deep. I want to do a sizing of the building. I also want to figure out the parking that's required for it. And we're also going to take a look at the landscape that's required for this as well. So first of all, let's look at the size of the building. Buildings are based on FAR. And if you remember, that stands for floor area ratio. So let's jump into the zoning. I guess what we should do first is pick out what's the use of the building. So as of right, what can I use? I have art gallery, bowling alley, daycare, health club, laundromat, office. So let's do an office. What kind of office should we use? All right, I think I heard someone say engineering office. I like that idea. So we're going to do an engineering office. And going back into that, so we know what type of use is. We don't need to worry about the special permits right now because that's all permitted as of right. But let's get into dimensional criteria and make sure we're good. First of all, it says, is your lot area 15,000 square feet? So this lot is 200 by 100. 150 by 200. That's a total of 30,000 square feet for the lot area. So we are greater than the required 15,000. That's good. Next, we're not a bank or pharmacy, so we don't have any other restrictions. Minimum road frontage. The road frontage must be 100 feet wide unless we're something else other than, say, an office. We are 150. So for the width, 150 is greater than 100. That's good. Then we go into setbacks. Okay, we haven't listed any setbacks yet, but we'll take a look at what that building envelope would be. So it says the front yard setback is 25 feet. The side yard setback is 10 feet. And the rear yard is 25. So 25 front and back, and then 10 on the sides. So that means we come down here and here. This is 25 feet from there to there. This would also be 25 feet. And then we can come in off the sides 10 feet and 10 feet. So the building envelope is now reduced to 130 feet by 150 feet. So the building can go anywhere within that zone. Now we get our FAR. Okay, the maximum permitted floor area ratio is 35%. So if we go back into that, we can take 35% of 30,000 square feet, which is the size of the lot. That means the building could be a maximum of 10,500 square feet, maximum. I can tell you right now, that's not going to fit for a number of reasons. We'll get to that in just a moment. Okay. So if we look at a building size of 10,500 square feet, the next thing we have to look at is what would our parking requirement be? So for parking, let's see, everything else is pretty much good for J2. So we can go into parking now. So parking, we have, what was our section for that? I'll just put that in. Required parking spaces, 849. Actually, 852, table of parking requirement. That's what we're looking for. So for an office, the use is going to be an office. and that means we have to have 1 per 150 square feet of GFA, gross floor area. So that means if we have 10,500 square feet and we divide that by 150 square feet per parking space, divide by 150, 10,500, divide by 150, that's a total of 70 spots. Okay, so you need to have 70 parking spaces for a building that's 10,500 square feet. Just some quick rough numbers here. If we take 130 by 150, that is the total area of our building envelope. That total amount here is 19,000, let's do it off to the side, 130 by 150. This is what they call back of the envelope calculations. That area here is 19,500 square feet, of which we're going to take a building area, maximum building area is 10,500. That's about half the size. That means that leaves us with 10,500, 9,000 square feet for parking. Can you fit 70 cars in 9,000 square feet? To answer that, you need to know what the size of a parking space is. So how do we figure that out? Well, we go to the code. So when we look for the size of the parking space, if you scroll down through all the requirements under the table of parking, it says under construction maintenance of facilities that in addition to having the required ADA parking, which we'll talk about later on, we also have to make sure our parking spaces are not less than 9 by 19. Okay, and that also means that we have to have a traffic aisle that runs between those parking spaces. Think about when you drive into a parking lot, that parking aisle has to be minimum of 24 feet wide. So that gives you some idea of the space required. So back to this idea of how many spots that is. Each spot is 9 by 19, which means each spot is 9 times 19, or 171 square feet per parking space. 171 square feet per parking space times 70 spots times 70 is 11,970 square feet. So we only have 9,000 square feet to work with. We need 11,970. Does not work. So how do we get less parking spaces? To get less parking spaces, what you have to do is you have to reduce the size of the building. And this is where it becomes what we call iterations. You try a building size, you see if you can make the parking lot work. There's no gold standard as to what the magic formula is for figuring out building size, but it does have an effect. It is based on the amount of parking you can fit in there. Over the years, I've looked at parking lots quite a bit, and if we look at a parking lot, and this is all kind of same idea what we're talking about here. If we look at a bunch of parking spaces, and then we have a drive aisle, we have more parking spaces this way. Just a rough sketch. That distance is 19 feet. That distance is 19 feet. The aisle between them is about 24 feet. So if we take half of that, say that's 12 feet, 19 plus 12 is 31 feet, and they're 9 feet wide. So 31 times 9 is 279 square feet per spot. It's about 300 square feet per spot. If you use that as a rough estimate, and again, very, very rough estimate, it works out that it kind of gives you an idea of just how many spots you can fit in a given area. So if you have 9,000 square feet, available for parking, you divide that by 300 square feet per spot, you can fit about 30 spots in there. Now, there will be other things that amend that, such as required landscaping, ADA, which are handicap accessible spots that can, lower this total on there. But now with 330 spots as a guide in 9,000 square feet, we can keep reverse engineering this and say that 30 spots at 150 square feet per spot for an office building, 30 times 150 gives me a space of 4,500 square feet. Okay, so that kind of backs into a rough building size. But there's more. We haven't even looked at our landscaping yet. All right, so we've already taken our building size from a maximum of 10,500, and we know that based on a 30,000 square foot lot, we can't build something that large. It's going to be something that's going to be smaller. So let's go in and take a look at our landscaping standards. I know this seems like we jump around a lot, but that's zoning. There's a lot of give and take with the numbers. So if we get into our requirements for J2 and our landscaping, which is a little bit further up, we have on landscaping, okay, land development standards. It says minimum natural area, except as otherwise provided herein, a minimum of 20% of a commercial site shall be maintained as a landscape natural area in accordance with town standards. It says it right there in black and white. Pretty straightforward. Okay? But did you, and I know you haven't because we haven't spoken about it yet, did you look at all of the attachments at the beginning of the zoning code? And attachment 6, which is your clearing standards, throws a kind of a monkey wrench into it. For residential sites, these are the maximum clearing standards. So if you live on a 1 acre site, 40,000 square feet, you are only allowed to clear 53% of it. The remaining 47 needs to stay as natural and undisturbed. That means weeds, poison ivy, nasty looking trees, all of that has to remain the way it came. What we're looking to do is not put it into a fertilizer dependent state, which means no lawns. So even though it's your land, you can't do anything you want with it. It's got to remain natural and undisturbed. In terms of commercial sites, commercial, industrial, and other mixed use, 65%. So the maximum we can clear a site is 65%. That means 35% needs to remain natural and undisturbed. And the town will go down to the nearest square foot on this. They're very, very particular about not exceeding this. So back to our example. So we thought we were at, we said we had a lot size was 30,000 square feet. For landscaping, you're looking at 65% clearing. So with a 65% clearing restriction, 30,000 times 0.65 is 19,500 clear and 10,500 natural. Okay, no clearing. So out of the 19,500 that's clear, in that space, we have to fit the building and the parking lot. So that's, again, further restricting the amount of area we have to work with. So we looked at that the parking lot, if we go with that example before, if we looked at a parking lot of 30 spots, that's about 4,500 square feet. If we look at the building, okay, and try and figure out what size building, I'm sorry, we said that the building would be about 4,500 square feet. And we said 30 spots would take 9,000 square feet. That would be a total of 9,000 plus 4,500. That looks to be about 13,500 square feet of space. Rough estimates. Okay, we can go a little bit more. So now we see that we have 19,500 clear. We're only at 13,500. So we could maybe bump up the size of the building. Let's say we bump it up by, let's say we go up by 2 spots. Okay, so this now, let's say, yeah, let's go up by 2 spots. Now we're at 9,600 square feet because it's 300 square feet per spot. And then your building could go up to 5,000 square feet. So 5,000 plus 9,600, 14,600. Getting closer. So what we're looking at is as we slowly add parking spaces and add the size of the building, we can kind of get back to where we need to be. All this has to take place at the same time that you're drawing it out. So you're going to draw out your parking lot, draw out your building size, and keep working that number till you get as close to that maximum clearing limit of 19,500. Let's not forget something. We're using this as a building, okay? So I'm just going to run the numbers with, oh, let's not even figure out the numbers just yet. We have a building size, 3,000 square feet. I'm sorry, building lot area, 30,000 square feet. What groundwater management zone are we in? For Brookhaven, the majority of Brookhaven is in the most restrictive, which means we are only allowed to put in 300 gallons per day per acre. So we have 30,000 square feet. Divide that by 43,560. We multiply that by 300. We are allowed to deal with 206.6 gallons per day going into that site, into that ground. What size building would it be? Office, 206.6 gallons per day per acre. And do you remember what the capacity, the density flow for an office was? 0.06 gallons per square foot. Okay, so that means based on the size of the property, we divide that by 0.06, your building size maximum 3343.52, and because the health department is a kind agency, they will let you go up to 3444 square feet. So, where do you start? Okay, I always recommend that you start sizing up your property based with the health department. Start first with the health department. After the health department, then take a look at the zoning. After the zoning, then you start sketching out your parking lot. Because the parking lot winds up being very restrictive as well. So with all these different things we've been looking at, and we still have to figure out drainage. Drainage won't be restrictive in terms of what you can put on there, but we still got to fit all those leaching pools on site. There's a lot of little pieces to this. But zoning, that's going to be your FAR. Almost guaranteed it'll be less restrictive than what the health department standards are going to be. Okay, so that's an example for a J2 site that we're going through. Oh, you know what, let's just finish this up. If you have 44 square feet, and we look at the parking for that, 3444 square feet, you divide that parking for an office is 150 square feet per spot. 3444 divided by 150, 22.96, so that's going to go up to 23 spots. That's a far cry from the 30 that we were looking at and even the 70 before that. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Hopefully you remember seeing this, the GIS viewer, Suffolk IMAP. This website is the GIS Center for Suffolk County. I just want to show you some other stuff that we can use this for with the example we're about to go through. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put on our aerials, kind of show you what Long Island looks like. But they've also incorporated other layers in here that talk about not so much zoning, a little bit about zoning, but the land use. And they basically color-coded Long Island to show you what the different uses are in the given areas. So the big ones you see here are green. That's all open space. That's areas for Long Island that are all considered to be open space. So parklands, areas that are not going to be developed. And additionally, the lighter green is agricultural. The gray ones are your transportation centers. So that the big ones would be things like airports. Roads kind of show up a little bit, but the big gray areas are your airports. And the other big colors you see here that stand out are going to be your yellow, which is the low density housing. And then we have intermittent, some high density residential, some dark areas here, a couple little spots here and there that's high density. And then the other one, blue, is going to be water. And I'm sorry, not water, institutional. The lighter blue is a watercolor. This is all institutional or government agencies that we're dealing with. Then we have the red is commercial. And commercial, notice, kind of outlines roads and highways, major thoroughfares. That's because we typically want businesses in areas where it's easy to travel to. But for this example, we're going to pull off the color coding, and we're going to take a look at the TD Bank over in Farmingville. And this one is pretty important to take a look at in terms of size of the property, parking spaces, and queuing. So in the Town of Brookhaven Code, anytime you want to do things such as a bank, we have an example here. Banks, let's say we have industrial zoning. Banks are permitted, and there are other zones where it's permitted as well. But what about drive-throughs? Drive-throughs are always done as an accessory to banks, which means you're not guaranteed the right to do so. It's done on a case-by-case basis. So if we take a look at this particular bank, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. You have your main parking, which is going to be sized based on the size of the building. It's a relatively small building, quite a bit of parking in there. That's all required based on the town standards. And we even have an additional parking on the back side. But what about these lanes here? These are your queuing lanes. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 queuing lanes. That means that vehicles can stack up in these lanes and wait to go through the drive-through teller area. I believe for banks it required 6 queues per window. So if they have 4 windows, you need to be able to stack 24 cars through this area. That's all going to be figured out when you're laying out your site. You also have to make sure that you have your offset distances, so many feet from the edge of the building to your property lines, front and back, and that you also maintain a certain amount of landscaping. Now, when we're looking at this in terms of keeping the properties natural and undisturbed and having a certain amount of landscaping in the front yard. So you can see towards the back of these properties, you have these large areas that are still kind of undisturbed. Over here, this is considered to be undisturbed as well. If we look at the data on these actual parcels, they were probably tied together at one point. Let's see if we can pull up the record information on this. Nope, that one doesn't have it. Okay, so this parcel is 1.6 acres, which is greater than the 65,000 square feet required. Right, 65,000 square feet divided by 43,560 is 1.49 acres. This is 1.63 acres. So it meets that requirement for the banks. In terms of landscaping, if you were to pull off all the area that you see that's green in that property line, that would have to meet the minimum standards of the town. Town requires a minimum of 35%, but when you get into the banks, I believe it's even more restrictive, and they may have a little bit more landscaping required. But as you look at all these different uses, and I'm sure what building this is, Big chunk of land that's just not being used. That's left as natural and undisturbed. Here we have some mini storage. At least it looks like mini storage here. What we notice is you have residential. I believe that's residential. There's going to be a buffer between the mini storage and those residential units. Here's a large parcel of land back here that goes unused because it's within the buffer, and it's also keeping that requirement of 35% or more as natural and undisturbed. So as you start looking at different parcels, specifically the commercial uses, older parcels may have been completely paved over because it was done prior to the zoning code being updated. But on newer construction, you'll see a lot more landscaping in those areas because that's the current requirements for the town. Okay, for the last example, we're going to take a look at multifamily housing. So my thought is we're going to take a parcel of land. Let's pick up Sachem. I think this is Sachem High School. And just pull off some numbers. This is 41.66 acres. And since we're going to online school, we'll no longer need this building, and we're going to convert over to some sort of multifamily, maybe like apartment building. So we can take each of those classrooms and turn it into an apartment. I think that'll be a good solution. So 41.66 acres. So I'm going to put that in my notes here, 41.66 acres. All right. Now I'm going to go into Town of Brookhaven Code, and we're going to take a look at multifamily. So that is MF district. And under the multifamily district, we have our different uses. And it says that we can make either rental or owner-occupied homes, attached, semi-attached, single-family, detached single-family. So things like townhouses, we can just knock that school down or renovate it for our use. So first of all, if that property was not zoned for MF, then we'd have to go through a whole change of zoning. A change of zoning on a piece of property that size would require a SECRA determination, so you'd have to go through that entire process as well. And what we want to do is we want to figure out just how many units can I get on 41.6 acres. So let's take a look at the density for that. So first of all, minimum lot area. There's no minimum lot area in a primary zone. What's a primary zone? There is a minimum lot in a secondary zone, that's 3 acres. And there's no requirements for lots created internally within that zone. So we'll get into those zones in just a second. There are front and side setbacks we have to deal with, and heights we have to deal with as well. And we also have floor area ratios, 50% and 30%. Those are very generous, will be okay. But it's the density I'm concerned about, all right? The density is just how many units you can have per acre. So in a primary zone, you can have 10 units per acre. And a secondary zone, you could have 7 units per acre. So let's take a look at what these different zones are. These zones are defined further up in the multifamily district. Thought they were. You know what? They're in, I believe it's in, oh, here we go. I'm sorry, I did see it. Site location. Primary zones. What a primary zone means that multifamily block of land has to be within a radius of 1,320 feet from a major arterial roadway and also associated with one of the following. 1,320 feet away from an existing downtown hamlet or commercial center. And you have to actually create what's called a radius map where you draw a circle around your property showing that it's within that. Within 2,000 feet of a transit-oriented development center, or within 2,000 feet of an MTA Long Island Railroad active station. Well, busing will work as well. Or if you're designated as high-density housing according to the town. Now, where's this 1,320 feet? It sounds pretty random. Well, 1,320 times 4 is 5,280, 5,280. 1,320 feet is a quarter mile. So they're saying that if you're within a primary zone, the people who live in multifamily homes should be able to walk a quarter of a mile to get to either some sort of shopping center, public transportation, or if they have to go a little bit further, 2,000 feet, which is a little bit more than a quarter mile, to a railroad station. So that's what they consider to be primary. Secondary zones means you're within 1,320 feet of a primary zone or a half mile away, or on a connector roadway with approximately 1,320 feet of existing commercial center services. All right, so that's what we're looking at. So let's just take a look at that map again, see how close we are to it, a major commercial center. So we see some major roadways, okay? We have, I'm not sure what road that is, but it's pretty large. I don't see any commercial centers. Okay, so there's nothing here that jumps out. We have more schools, a lot of residential. So if I wanted to create multifamily residential in an area like this, I would have a density rating much lower. Let's see if we go lower than secondary. Okay, so there's no increase. So we would be considered to be under this base density. Okay, base density for land which is zoned commercially or industrial should be 3 units per acre. So because I fall into a category where I'm not near useful places for the occupants of that multifamily units, they want to put less people there. Okay, what that's doing, the zoning is creating the condition where it promotes smart locations for multifamily. Put it in places where people can walk to shopping centers. Put it in places where people have access to public transportation. These are the things we talked about in green building as well. Okay, you get additional credits for smart siting of your buildings. So let's see how many units I could actually get out of this. So we have to do 3 units per acre. That means I could put in a total of 124.98. We get 125 units of housing in a district like that if we take out the high school and put up multifamily. If we were closer to something like a commercial center, we could have gotten 41.66 times 10. We could have gotten 416.6 or 417 units. Think about the amount of money the developer would make going to 417 units of housing versus 125 units of housing on the exact same piece of property. This is all subject to health department review, because with 50 acres or 41.6 acres, we're probably not going to have the proper density for the sanitary waste to get the full 417. But we get pretty close to it. Okay, in terms of other things with the multifamily, you can get an increase in the density based on Pine Barren redemption. Okay, so you can actually buy some Pine Barren credits someplace else and transfer them into the site and get an even higher density than that. But I want to bring you back to the zoning beginning for zoning. That's chapter 85. And when we go into that zoning unit, we're going to go take a look at the attachment for multifamily residential. Okay, and this is the table that gives you all the dimensional regulations just like you had with residential. So when you click on it, you see nothing. Okay, the town used to have a table up here for multifamily. It was repealed back in 2019. They haven't updated it, but they are leaving it as a placeholder. That's why you have to constantly check back with this website. This is updated on a quarterly basis. I should actually say even a monthly basis for some aspects of it, but the zoning codes constantly change. If we were doing this a year ago, this multifamily table would be present and all those calculations would be based on the distances shown here. Now that it's empty, you're going to get all that information by going into the multifamily zoning, MF zoning. Let's go back to that real quick. Multifamily residence districts. And within that, it will give us all of the dimensional criteria. Okay, what your minimum lot area is, the setbacks, side yard setbacks, and so on. All right, so that'll be the last example for today. I know it's a lot of stuff to go over, but this is pretty important stuff, so please make sure you keep on top of it. Next class, we're going to be jumping into a lot of design examples, where I'm going to show you how we search through the code and figure out the particular information we need for the different sites. Have a good day.